Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to PTV World. I'm Tayyaba Nisar Khan bringing you the show The Debate. And with me are joining Mr. Farooq Patafi as well as Raja Faisal, who is the geopolitical analyst, as well as Mr. Farooq Patafi, who is, of course, an analyst in overall situations, especially for domestic and international politics as well. So now we're going to talk about two very, very important topics. The first topic is definitely going to be about the recent Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's visit, the 3-day visit to Brussels on the, of course, the European Union and Pakistan strategic dialogue, where so many other things were discussed as well. And of course, we know that European Union hailed Pakistan's development in the FATF as well, and this was a very, very important step for Pakistan as well, because we know that we do remain in grey list, but we are trying to come out of the grey list as well. And of course, this diplomatic move was very, very significant as well. And we know that the European Union welcomed the progress that was made in regards to FATF, as well as also appreciating the other acts and developments in Pakistan regarding the protection of journalists and media professionals bill. And of course, he also appreciated the ceasefire which was implemented, the ceasefire of LOC in March 2021 regarding the India-Pakistan issue as well. And also, of course, the second segment is going to talk about the very, very important topic, that is the 1971 war heroes. We know this is a national tragedy, but we also know that many national heroes were born, many war heroes were born. And these war heroes are the ones who give us motivation, who give us courage, because their courage is viral for all of us. And we know that we have to continue going onto their footsteps, because this is going to help Pakistan come out of the shackles of terrorism. And of course, this terrorism is being exported by India, as it was being exported by India back in 1971 as well. So let's go on to our first segment, which is of course the foreign minister's visit to Brussels, and of course about the FATF as well. Now I'm going to ask my panelists the questions. Very, very important question. Let's talk about FATF. This is the most prime issue right now. We know that this was, we were put in grey list back in 2018. Right now in 2021 agenda, we have about finished 4 out of 7 issues that are on the agenda in 2021. Farooq, I'm going to come to you first. Okay. These are very, very important times for Pakistan. Of course, we applied for the GSP Plus status as well. We'll talk about that later right now. But let's talk about these 3 remaining postulates. We have been shown some, good development and good positive appreciation by EU. But what are these 3 remaining issues that are, pulling us out of the coming out of the grey list?
Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I thought that you are going to start with the geopolitical analyst, not the analyst. But let me, first of all, hail this visit. It is very important. What we don't realize in this city, in this country, is that EU has become a massive, massive player on itself. It has its own impact. It has its own policies, which now, with every passing day, are independent, more or less independent of the US influence. NATO is there, but EU is going to play a very important part. Now, FATF's assessments you have seen. There are various aspects that have been flagged in the past. There was a lot of talk about Benami accounts, the way money could have actually ended up with various groups or would have led out of Pakistan. Pakistani government has one by one fixed all those problems.
Absolutely.
There are aspects which are important. For example, the land acquisitions and money that is declared in that fashion, that was causing some problem. There are certain other issues as well, centralization of data records, various others. So Pakistan, to my knowledge, has actually fixed plugged all the holes. While we do it, it is a matter of intensity, how much it is implemented and how effectively.
Okay,
remember, sorry to cut you, but just compare Pakistan with another country called India. India's economy, most of its economy is not properly documented, although it hasn't landed in FATF grey list. But ask any person from the West, and they'll tell you what Pakistan has achieved so far is heroic.
Absolutely. Pakistan has achieved very heroic results, absolutely. Now, Hammaz Azhar has said that we have completed all our action plans. And of course, the country, so many international community, the countries and international community do believe in that as well. So my senior analyst, Farokh, I'm going to ask you this question, that have we completed all the action plans, and the ones that are remaining, how much time would we take? How much time would we take to complete them in order to, come out of the grey list?
Right. I think that is very important because FATF is not essentially a data point entry body. It is not something that actually only goes by the merits.
Absolutely.
While they give you a list and they have a technical component, in the end, everything is resolved by voting. So while you are actually voting for certain things, or countries supporting you are voting, there are other countries that actually lobby against you. One example is India,
Absolutely.
which has played a very important part in APG, Asia Pacific Group, which is, a subsidiary, so to speak, of FATF. So they have been actually playing their negative role. But the interesting part is that this year, India is also going to be assessed. When it happens, that means that there will be some give and take. Regarding the Western influence, France is very important, but that's why one has to be really wary of any group that actually comes out when FATF is going on and they start agitating against French government in Pakistan. That has been used against Pakistan in the past as well. Remember, there were resolutions against Pakistan's GSP plus status that actually came up because of these elements. But honestly, I think that we are there almost. But there is a problem because it is Western, group. They are going to be political in essence. And after Afghanistan, after umpteen other things, for example, we have turned down the participation in this very important meeting regarding democracy, right? Actually held by President Biden. So these are going to have repercussions, but I think on merits, we have done everything that was
Okay,
needed
so I
to be
will
done.
ask you a question regarding Afghanistan because you've mentioned that. I'll add about US as well because you've mentioned that as well. I'm going to go to Faisal first, and I'm going to ask him, of course, Subramaniam Jaishankar, he's the foreign minister over there in India. He has said that we have played a major role in getting Pakistan to stay in the grey list. But Dr. Player, who's the president of ATF, he's, said that no, this is on consensus basis. So does India have a role in lobbying against Pakistan as Farokh has talked about it? What is your opinion?
Taiba, first of all, let me, hail here Farokh's comments. And Farokh is not only your senior analyst, he's my senior analyst as well. I get a lot to learn from him.
I was just kidding, don't mind me. I mean, we all are seniors or juniors.
And about Farokh's comments about India, I fully endorse them. India has been lobbying against Pakistan for a long time, and Farokh very well mentioned that they had their influence in Asia Pacific as well, and of course they used that influence in the Western atmosphere as well, and they have been quite successful when it comes to getting Pakistan on that list. But at the same time, FATF president's comments, he is right as well. And I think I always consider FATF, we being put in the grey list of the FATF, a blessing in disguise. Because let's be very honest, I think there were a few of the things we were supposed to do, we did not do, and it was for our good. And especially about the previous governments, we used to get so many news, we used to go through so many news in which we were told that the previous governments and previous ministers and all, they were involved in money laundering. They were there were no caps on the banking systems in them days, and I think it was a blessing in disguise for Pakistan that when Pakistan was asked to mend its ways, it was a good hectic job, but Pakistan is doing it. Out of 40 recommendations of FATF, Pakistan has complied with 35. Some of them are fully compliant, largely compliant, and then partially compliant, and there are only 2 which are non-compliant. And I believe if the progress which is being made by the current government the continuity takes place in this progress, time is not far that we would be having all of these recommendations fixed. And coming to the current visit of Foreign Minister, it was very important. It was very important in terms of Pakistan's current situation, diplomatic situation. Of course, we were having problems to bring Americans on board, bring others on board for Afghanistan as well. And it was the best time that Pakistan went to European Union, and European Union should be considered as a power hub for the West. And if we are successful in getting them on board, and I'm pretty much sure that Foreign Minister, he had a very healthy talk with his counterpart over there. Related to the situations in Afghanistan as well. So GSP plus, it's been discussed. FATF, it's been obviously discussed. And by the way, our foreign ministers, he was hailed for whatever Pakistan has achieved so far in the recommendations.
Absolutely.
And the very important thing is, I'm pretty much sure that Foreign Minister has successfully talked over the issue of Afghanistan as well with the Western powers, and I think this is a very positive step forward.
Very, very positive step for Pakistan as well, because we're trying to build relations with the EU as well, and of course we want to come out of the grey list of FATF, and hopefully very soon we will as well. Now Farrukh, you talked about a very important aspect, that was the US influence in this entire situation, because the West has influence, and you also said that now West is concerned regarding after especially the Afghanistan issue, but now we know that we were hailed regarding the Afghan evacuation of the EU citizens from Afghanistan during the crisis, and of course the foreign minister also said that the EU should be involved heavily into the consultation process regarding Afghanistan. And also we met Joseph Borrell, who's a vice president of the European Commission as well, and he's heading the high representative of the foreign and security division as well. So how do you think this all comes into play? What is the role of US, and especially with all the EU support to Pakistan, what is the role?
Right, that is very important question regarding the US role. Remember that EU was built from ashes when you talk about Europe itself, because after the Second World War and after the Cold War as well, it was primarily the US which actually helped rebuild it. And they were very close because of the NATO alliance. But then one person called Donald Trump actually happened. Donald Trump, when he came here, so he actually created so much mistrust or distrust between the two elements that they have been actually trying to understand where they stand. So at this moment you see France that actually quite often actually disagrees with the US president. Then you also see Germany that is going to change its total direction within a few months. So, but remember one thing, while people keep on telling you that the US is declining, US is one power which is far ahead, and other countries, China, EU, others, will take ages to reach where America is right now. But when you talk about the number 2 position, you hear that China, Russia, but there are two elements that actually work and that have accomplished something because of their growth. One is China, the other one is EU. EU is very influential and economically very, very effective, particularly because of countries like Germany.
Absolutely.
So at this moment, it is very important to actually work with all of them. Today, Prime Minister of Pakistan made a very interesting statement, and I think he's absolutely spot on. That instead of actually becoming or allowing us a Cold War to exist between China and America or any other country and America, we should be working with both to actually bring them together, and we can do it. The country has lost so many people to wars that now we know that we shouldn't be, and the world shouldn't be fighting.
True. Absolutely. We know that the world shouldn't be fighting, and even though Samuel Huntington himself has also said that not Samuel Huntington, but rather there was a person who wrote the U.S. lobby and Israeli foreign policy. I'm forgetting the name of this person. If you could help me. Mearsheimer. Yes, Mearsheimer has said that even though U.S. is declining in power and now the unipolar system has changed into a multipolar system, we still have to know that the GDP of U.S. is still 67,000 plus. Yes,
one
just
very,
last minute, please.
Very quick intervention regarding all the experts from Huntington, who is dead and buried for right reason, but others, Mearsheimer and others, remember that IR is dying at this moment because there are 20 plus theories. True. And they never see eye to eye on anything.
Yes.
Exactly.
So at this moment, don't listen to all these pundits who have been failing since the end of Cold War.
But the good thing is that we met the NATO. We have to go on the other segment, so I'm just going to conclude this segment because the good thing is that we met the NATO Jens Stoltenberg as well, the president, and we also talked about how the Afghan situation is culminating right now, how it's developing rather right now as well, and of course the GSP plus status of Pakistan is also very, very significant as well, and of course Pakistan is. EU in itself is hailing Pakistan's role in helping it come out of the grey list of FATF, so that's a very, very good thing for Pakistan as well, a very good development for Pakistan as well. Now let's go on to our next segment, which I believe is a very, very significant segment for us, because this segment is where we're going to hail the war heroes. We're going to hail those who died fighting for us, who died fighting for those people who are, now secure in Pakistan. And despite all the terrorist activities being exported into Pakistan by our arch enemy India right now from the eastern border as well from the western border, we know that these war heroes are the ones who are going to give us courage, who are going to help us in staying determined, because these war heroes have won the war despite all the odds, despite the fact that 5 times larger army was facing them. There was diplomatic pressure from all the fronts. There was sea on one side and then surrounded by land on all the sides, and then there was the inclusion, the literal injection of those insurgents, Mukti Bahini, into the eastern border as well, into East Pakistan. And and yet, despite all of this, they stayed determined, they stayed valiant, they stayed courageous, and they are the war heroes that we're going to celebrate today. Some of the war heroes, before I introduce our next guests as well, along with the panelists, some of the war heroes, I'd like to mention them. Some of the war heroes such as Rashid Minhas, some of the war heroes such as Lieutenant Colonel Raja Sultan Mahmood, some of the war heroes such as Major Raja Javed Akhtar, some of the war heroes such as Major Akram, such as Major Shabir Sharif Shaheed, such as Muhammad Hussain Janjua, such as Naik Muhammad Mahfuz, and such as so many other people that we probably don't even know the stories of. There are so many, and of course, I'm going to go on.
Janjua as well.
Absolutely. I will go on to you, Faisal. I want you to highlight certain stories, some stories that, bring some joy to your heart by knowing that they have fought for Pakistan as well. But of course, let's introduce the guest first on Skype. Major Shahryar, he's the son of Major Raja Javed Akhtar Shaheed. He's online with us. Thank you so much for joining us. You are somebody who is the war hero in himself, because you're the one who has indirectly seen the war through the eyes of your father. And we know that Shaheed never die. The blood in their vein always runs through. I want to ask you, first of all, welcome to PTV World. We're honored to have you. And secondly, I want to ask you to narrate the story of the heroism of your own father by your own words and by your own lips.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me thank you for this honor that I've been, called to speak about Shaheeds of 1971 war. 71 war is actually a classic example of a smaller force fighting a much larger force in a very difficult kind of environment without any logistic support. And the heroes that you've just mentioned, some of them, and a lot of them, I mean, the whole Pakistan army that was engaged in a battle with the Indian forces, as well as, the rebels of Mukti Bahini, they all performed extremely well. As you mentioned, my own father, Major Raja Javed Akhtar, he was in 30FF at that time. He was second in command, 30FF. But before that, I would like to just quickly tell you about his personality before he went into war. 30FF was raised in 1969. It was just a newly formed battalion, infantry battalion of the PIFers. And they were moved to East Pakistan in March 1971. And Major Javed, Raja Javed Akhtar, my father, he was posted from 6FF to 30FF to be part of the battalion as second in command. And Lieutenant Colonel, later Brigadier Shakur Jan, was the CO who raised this battalion. Major Raja Javed Akhtar was apparently 6FF. He was commissioned in 6FF. And he was a mountaineer. He was Pakistan's first mountaineer to conquer one of the most highest peaks of the world, which is Mashbroom 1. He was one of the team leaders who reached to summit Mashbroom 1 in 1959 and was awarded Pride of Performance, the first Pride of Performance for any sporting field in 1960 by Ayub Khan, President Ayub Khan. In 1965 war, again, he was part of 6FF in Chamjodiya sector. He was a company commander. Major Shabir Sharif, who was at that time Second Lieutenant Shabir Sharif, was Major Raja Javed Akhtar's company officer. And they both were engaged in the same operation in which Shabir Sharif earned for his gallantry, he earned Sitara Jurat. And my father, Major Raja Javed Akhtar, was given CS Commendation Card for the same operation. Now, coming to 1971 war, 30FF, as I told you, was a newly raised battalion, officers and Jawans from various PIFR units who were collected together, and this battalion was formed in 1969. And within a year or so, they were moved to a theater in East Pakistan, about which they had no they had not served there, although some of the officers, like my own father, had served in East Pakistan previously. But most of the OAs, most of the soldiers and officers had not been to East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. They were initially tasked, the battalion arrived in Dhaka in March 1971, and they were initially tasked to protect the Dhaka airport. They did that. They were involved in other operations around Dhaka, and some of which were led by one of the famous operations, Charas operation. It's Charas or Charas, which was about 40 miles away from Dhaka, and the battalion walked all the way 40 miles to conduct a anti-rebellion operation, and they successfully, completed that. In July to August, the battalion was moved from Dhaka, and they were tasked to move to the eastern side of Bangladesh, East Pakistan, and in Sylhet sector. They were tasked to defend a border outpost which was located at a place called Daloi. Now, Daloi was a tea garden, a series of tea gardens, and it was on a higher ground, and so that it overlooked all the terrain and area around it. So that's why it was taken up as a border outpost to, monitor all the area which was across the border as well as around it. So they, as you understand, that the army, the military in East Pakistan, Pakistan Army, they did not have that much, strength. So the area was more, and the units were less. So this unit, 30FF, was tasked to cover a very, elongated front. So they were forced to deploy their companies, 3 companies up, all 3 companies, and 1 company was kept in reserve. And also the border outpost was defended by 3 platoons under the command of a Second Lieutenant Mushtaq Nawaz Kiani, who was probably the youngest Shaheed of 1971 war. He had recently been, commissioned from Pakistan Military Academy, and he had joined, I think, a couple of months before this operation, he had joined the battalion. So he was very young. So with that elongated front, the battalion was spread on a very large front. A lot of gaps were there, And in October, mid of October, 1971 war, the Indians started, because this BOP was a very important location for Indians to move towards Sylhet and further. They had to, take this BOP. So they initiated in mid-October, they initiated operations with initially they tasked Mukti Bani, the rebels of East Bengal Rifles, to attack this BOP and take it over. But 30FF defended this locality, and very successfully, in fact. They repulsed the Mukti Bani, the East Bengal Rifles attacks, the rebels attacks 2-3 times, but they were repulsed. So finally the Indians
Major Shahryar, if you allow me, of course, 1971 war, whenever it comes in front of us, of course, we go through many stories of betrayals, especially the Bengali soldiers we had at that time. They were actually betraying and joining the Indians. Plus, we know there are so many facts that Indians were especially funding into Mukti Bahini. They were training them, and they were trying their level best, like they do it today. They were doing at that time to infiltrate terrorism, infiltrate betrayals within Pakistan's rank. At that time, of course, we have everyone highlights them things everywhere. But when it comes to heroism, when it comes to hero figures of Pakistan Army, hardly anyone even talks about them. Here, there was another hero I wanted to really talk about.
Yes.
It was Lieutenant Colonel Raja Sultan. About him, one of the major generals of the Indian Army, he wrote a book and he mentioned him and his heroism in that book. Then we had another officer who actually served on the same base where Lieutenant Colonel Sultan, he jumped in there and he fought against them, and he shot at one of their captains. And his heroism he actually highlighted through a letter that he sent to his son, who was serving as a brigadier in Pakistan Army at that time. But now I think you can mention his name, because you know General Noman very well. And I want you to, if you could narrate his story as well for me, please.
Right, thank you, Faisal. I'll just quickly first complete what 30FF did. 30FF, and then I'll come to Lieutenant Colonel Sultan Mahmood and the action of 22 Baluch. I grew up with Lieutenant General Noman Mahmood. We lived in a colony that's called the Shaheed Officers Colony in Rawalpindi. So yes, I had the honor of growing up with son of a Shaheed and many others, and also knowing the family. 30FF action, just quickly, let me tell you, the BOP was attacked a few times by the Indians, and finally they managed to encircle the battalion. And Major Raja Javed Akhtar, second in command, who was in the battalion headquarters, decided to counterattack, and during that counterattack, trying to make a gap for the forward troops who were encircled by Indians as well as East Bengal Rifle soldiers, he wanted to create, and in that action he embraced Shahadat, and with him there were 3 other officers who embraced Shahadat, plus 30FF also lost almost more than 100 soldiers in that action. So it is one of the most heroic actions of 1971 war, or all wars. Now coming on to 22 Baluch and Lieutenant Colonel Raja Sultan Mahmood. I mean, he was an exemplary example of bravery and gallantry and resilience and honor, actually. 22 Baluch was deployed on, Rangpur-Bogra axis, which was actually in the north of East Pakistan. And on 7th December, one of our major generals who was moving, Major General Nazar, Colonel Raja Sultan Mahmood, received information through his brigade headquarters that the GOC has been ambushed and taken hostage by the enemy. So he was tasked to go and rescue the GOC. So Colonel Sultan Mahmood, who was the commanding officer, he didn't need to go himself, but he decided to lead the party himself. He took one infantry company forward, leading it himself, and they reached the area where the general was ambushed at around late on 7th evening. And as soon as they reached the area, they found out that the Indians had already had dug out their defense system, and they received fire from the Indian side. So the battle continued for almost 7-8 hours, and this company, which was led by the 22 Baluch company, which was led by the CO himself, was pinned down for 3-4 hours. They returned fire and they tried to move forward, and in that they almost reached the Indian defense line in early hours of 8th December. And that was the time when CO, Lieutenant Colonel Raja Sultan Mahmood, decided that he has to go for it, and he himself led one of the platoons and attacked the Indian trenches. And in that, he jumped into one of the Indian trenches, in which there was a captain.
Very interesting story of
And
both your father as well as Mr. Sultan Mahmood as well, Lieutenant Colonel Sultan Mahmood, and your father as well, Mr. Major Raja Javed Akhtar. Thank you so much for joining us and narrating your story, Major Shahryar, your story, your father's story, and your father's friend's story, because these were, of course, very, very interesting as well. Now we're going to talk about the Indian sponsorship of terrorism, because we know that, at that time there was injection of the Mukti Bahini into East Bangladesh as well, Pakistan, which was now Bangladesh. And there was a sponsorship of terrorism right at that time, and now there is currently a sponsorship of terrorism as well. We know that a dossier was presented back in November, which stated categorically with evidence that India had been sponsoring terrorism within Pakistan and had been funding and terror financing so many organizations which are already proscribed and banned by the United Nations. Farrukh, India has been constantly funding against Pakistan. Kulbhushan Yadav, I want to highlight Kulbhushan Yadav because he's one of those, the person who highlights the terrorism in Pakistan, which is being led by India. So what is the story of Kulbhushan Yadav? What is the story of Indian terrorism in Pakistan?
Right, amazingly. First of all, let me also thank Major Shahryar for a very granular and detailed explanation of everything. He told us about topography, about formations and gallantry also, which is very important. And at that time, I was actually thinking how much granular record we have. And if we do have, is it accessible? Because connecting to the point that you were making, there is this history of Mukti Bahini, which had training camps, and particularly the problem with my country is these days, and other countries perhaps also, that we don't read too much. So there is this book, Betrayal of East Pakistan, by General Niazi, the commandant who was leading it. And in that book, he says that when I went there, we realized that there were training camps 3 kilometers deep inside India that were actually training and exporting terrorism to our region, right, East Pakistan. Just think about it, that India is and has been, although it keeps on crying foul of other countries, but it is perhaps in this region the biggest exporter of terrorism and destabilizing ideology. Ask, I tell you, not only Pakistan or Bangladesh, ask also Sri Lanka, ask Myanmar, Nepal, other countries, they have been consistently doing it. If we could actually take all the data of Mukti Bahini training camps and whatever India kept on doing in East Pakistan and keep on connecting it with other instances, you build a case against India.
Absolutely. Okay, and we're going to go towards our second guest of the show, Mr. Lieutenant General Retired Naeem Khalid Loti. Welcome to the show in PTV World.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so India has been exporting terrorism. We know that dossier was presented as well by Pakistan to the international community, by the DGISPR as well as the foreign minister. And we presented that dossier to the United Nations and OIC as well, where we categorically stated with evidence, with proof that India is exporting terrorism and we should stop this rogue behavior of India. Is the international community taking any action regarding that? Why is it turning a blind eye?
I think you already know the answer, and our viewers also know the answer, that this world is not a level playing field, and things do not move on the basis of justice or fair play as far as this world is concerned. We are all aware of it. So it is the interest of the nations according to which they make statements, according to which they react, and all that. So if they do not react to what Indians are doing to us, so we should understand this is the norm of international relations. But then at the same time, I keep on saying this thing that there's no point in always complaining that this is happening to us and that is why is it happening to us? Why can't we react? Why are we not doing anything in response? And why are we shy to do the same thing whatever is happening to us? That is the main question. I think instead of blaming the world, let us blame ourselves. It is our meek reactions and our passive attitude which is actually allowing India to do all that to us. And I think complaining will make no sense. And it
So
will
how do we
never
strengthen our
achieve it.
reaction? Lieutenant General, how do we strengthen our reaction regarding this?
One simple thing is that we have all the rights to do everything to India, whatever she is doing to us. It is so simple. And of course, we have to make sure that internally we are strong. Of course, we are trying our best, but I don't have to explain it into details. Every political party is at each other's neck. Every institution is, complaining against other institutions. Is this the way a nation behaves? Unless you have internal solidarity and you have, sound economy, how can you really stand up against
Absolutely.
the odds?
With your
which-
permission, Tayyeba and
Yes.
Faisal Saab, Jalal Saab, let me ask you about, let me take you back to 1971. It was an amazing, the stories that we are hearing in this program of gallantry, of leadership are amazing. But there was a positive side, there was a negative side. Whatever happened, East Pakistan seceded. Let me ask you, what were the lessons and have we learned it in our operational implementation of the reforms when it comes to fighting the
And I
enemy?
want to add one more thing to his question. How do we improve our operational response as well if we haven't learned it?
Well, thank you very much. The first lesson is at the politico-military level, because it was a politico-military defeat. It was a political defeat, it was a military defeat. Political in the sense that we were not able to get the people of erstwhile East Pakistan love us and like us and to be with us, and we with them. And then secondly, once there was a system, and according to that system, whatever thing was emerging, we should have negotiated that. And we don't have to go into details. But one thing is for sure, that if you fail in strategy, it is very difficult to win in operations or tactics. So I think at operational level, we may not be very good. At tactical level, we were excellent. At operational level, we were just, I would say, 50-50. And at strategic level, we did very bad. So we need to understand that if we did bad at strategic level, we need to now learn lessons as far as strategic level is concerned, as far as political level is concerned. I think we have learned about half the lessons, and many lessons still to be learned.
Very interesting.
General Lodi, I had a question, sir, and it was related to, we know that in past, obviously Prime Minister of India, he boasted about his involvement in Mukti Bahini and Jana Sangh campaign and all that. We know that. And of course, their NSA, National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, he's been boasting about it as well, that how they have been, penetrating terrorism, penetrating Mukti Bahinis and all of these, terrorists inside East Pakistan at that time. And of course, they wanted, East Pakistan to obviously, break away from Pakistan at that time. And they were successful at that time. Now, don't you think that we have similar kind of situations? Because in one of his speeches, Ajit Doval, where he highlighted defensive offense. He did talk about it that we will be using the fault lines of Pakistan, and of course in Balochistan we are seeing, and in the northern areas we are seeing of Pakistan, where TTP and these sort of elements, they were being helped by the Indians. They are doing their job. But what about us as civilian Pakistanis? Are we aware, or is there a mechanism that can tell us that we need to be aware about these facts, that if we were always cautious, if we were always prepared, then whatever happened in 71, it couldn't have happened. And now when we have these kind of situations again erupting from the Indian side, are we prepared enough now?
You can also add that he also mentioned about the money which has been put aside as far as doing all this against Pakistan is concerned. And I think Pakistan media, from the media point of view, even from the social media point of view, is doing a lot to fight back as far as this thing is concerned. But to highlight this thing at the world level, these very obvious statements and these very obvious videos that we have got, and we have not been able to spread it in a way that every individual in the world should know the character of the leadership of India. Giving folders and giving dossiers is something else. That is given to the officials. But the people of the world, the civil society of the world, they need to be sensitized that what is happening and what are they planning. I think we have failed in that. And it seems to me that no institution finds itself responsible to spread this message. Foreign Office thinks that they have to be more concerned about the foreign affairs. Army thinks that they have to be more concerned
that is a
about
very important point. Let me once again go back to Raja Sahab, Raja Shahryar. Sir, while you were actually narrating all the stories of gallantry, I was thinking that these are stories that actually we can tell our children for posterity, right? And one feels that in the past we used to have Nishan-e-Haider, these dramas, then we used to have these publications that used to actually come up with all the details because they have to be in public domain. I'm sure that you must have contributed to that discourse as well. But how important it is to actually bring these tales of heroism back to center stage and making it part of our collective creative impulse.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. There's a saying that I usually quote to people that about 1971 war, that don't ask me how they surrendered. Let me tell you how they fought. So it is very, very important for us. That is very, very important for us to, and by the way, when I started writing about the 1971 war, I was, inspired by my own father's action, plus also people like Colonel Sultan Mahmood, Major Akram Raja, there's so many other incidents. So when I started writing about them and also started sharing it on Twitter as well as other social media, many of the younger generation thanked me for that, because they had no idea what happened in 1971 war, and they always, at least people like me, we joined the army, so we were perforce required to study the war history, etc. But people even from my own generation or the later generations, they had no clue except for national Nishan-e-Haider or some gallantry award heroes. Yeah. Other than that, they did not know what actually. So you're right. It is very, very important that we tell our new generation about our history, the heroes of our history, the people who fought, gave up their lives to divert this tragedy of 1971 war. It's unfair to them that we do not talk about them. We always take 1971 war as a surrender, as a defeat, as a ceasefire, but it's unfair to these heroes, people like Colonel Raja Sultan Mahmood, who fought hand to hand, people like Major Akram, Shaheed Nishan-e-Haider, people like my own father, so many other people who were, fighting, who were giving up their lives, who were being injured, who were sacrificing everything, their families sacrificing everything. But we don't talk about them. It's very unfair to the
Very
nation.
interesting, Major
It's
Shahryar.
very
You
unfair
talked
to
about
the
how
Ji.
Pakistan should be prepared in order to educate our younger children as well, the younger generations, generations of mine, generations younger than me, and so many other generations who do not know about the unsung heroes who have fought so valiantly in the 1971 war, and who are the role models that we could say would help us in bringing more determination into the military. Now I'm going to go to Mr. General Lodhi right now. Of course, we know that 700 strong militia was prepared by India as well, by the 10-member RAW committee, the personnel in RAW, to attack CPEC projects as well. I think CPEC is very, very significant because Balochistan, BLA is directly targeting CPEC as well. How prepared is Pakistan in order to deter any impact that India is trying to create on Pakistani soil, especially on CPEC, which is an economic activity of Pakistan, and they do not realize that?
I think Pakistan is preparing very well in certain fields, and in some other fields it requires a little more preparation. Physical defense of CPAC is probably in place, but we all know that it is not only physical; it is also narrative-wise, it is also economical undermining, it is also foreign policy. So unless we strengthen ourselves and align ourselves properly according to the circumstances, according to our interests, as far as foreign policy is concerned, and as far as our economic affiliations are concerned, our economic efforts are concerned, physical efforts alone will not suffice. And we are
Absolutely.
doing well as far as physical side is concerned, but I'm not very sure what is being
Now,
done in the
lastly,
other
there's
fields.
one last question that I'd like to ask.
And you
General
can
Lodhi.
ask her. I just wanted
Okay.
to. This might be banter,
Okay,
and
sure.
I usually don't do it on air. But Faisal, listening to Raja Shahryar and you and others, I was just wondering. There used to be these plays on television called Nishan-e-Haider. These days, we have plays that actually portray current struggles of the armed forces or their movement. But these stories about the past, I was thinking the kind of granular details we got. Perhaps you and I and all present can team up and write some screenplays for television. It is very easy.
I think Farooq
And-
should take a
and-
lead in this.
And why not actually rekindle this? Because the kind of entertainment we keep on creating without any message, this must be really a game changer in that.
Absolutely, and according to the framing theory and the agenda setting theory, I think
Yeah,
Farooq, you
don't-
rightly
don't-
pointed out that as well.
Don't set agenda. Don't
Okay.
frame. Just inspire.
I just
Okay,
wanted
very
to
interesting.
highlight a fact. Last week I watched a movie which was obviously there just because of ISPR. ISPR is working really hard and day and night.
Are you
And
talking
I
about
think-
General Degar's movie?
No, it was related to how Bangladesh got split by
Yes,
Pakistan and the harsh realities they did highlight there, and of course they highlighted that there are still people who are in Bangladesh who still consider Bangladesh to be part of Pakistan, and still they are proudly they want to be called as Pakistanis rather than Bengalis. So there are things which are going on, but
Right.
as
They are doing their
Farooq
job.
has said that
They are doing
we
their
have
job.
we have to do more.
They are doing their job. But man, have you watched entertainment televisions
Yeah.
these days?
You know what you're
I
talking
mean, there's
about,
no
both
story.
of you,
Exactly.
Faisal
So why
and
not
Farooq.
actually have the micro inspirational story?
Absolutely. Faisal and Farooq, you've both talked about a very important element. We've moved from 1971's hard power show to now soft power show.
Exactly.
Disinfo Lab, the EU Disinfo Lab, just took out 265 cases of Indian outlets who were working on the fake news as well. Lastly, in just 1 minute, General Lodhi, I would like to ask you, how can Pakistan counter in a soft power manner? We are talking about soft power right now. How do we counter?
Wars have to be fought in the field where you are being attacked. So it is so simple. If we are being attacked through misinformation, disinformation, we have got to bring out the truth. I will not say that because truth prevails ultimately, but then we have to speak that truth again and again, and in the language in which the world understands. And the number of channels should be such that it can reach the people at large. I'm talking about the civil society of the world. So unless we do that, naturally, anyone who has a bigger mouth, anyone who is speaking the language which the world understands, that side will win, and we have to do a lot in that field.
Thank you so much, Major Shahryar, as well as
may I
Lieutenant
add
General
something?
retired Naeem Khalid Lodi, who's the former Defense Minister of Pakistan as well. Thank you for joining us, for answering all our questions as well. And thank you to Farokh and Faisal for such an interactive discussion regarding how Pakistan can now play its role in the soft power in image building, and also to realize and to ensure that our generations realize that the war heroes, the unsung war heroes, it's time to sing praises for them, and it's time to realize who they exactly were. Thank you for watching the debate. This is Tayyaba Nisar Khan signing off with Farokh and Faisal. Take care.